welcome back to another tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to navigate the interface of Unity. Particularly we'll use a version of 2023 which a lot of developers and creators are using, which is the version before Unity 6.1 and the new release is 6.2, and we have alpha and beta versions. So let's begin. So the first thing I want to do is to open the Unity Hub. Once we open the Unity Hub, you'll see my installs. I'm currently recording this now in 2025, and then we'll see there are two versions of Unity installed here. I have a 6.0 and the 2023.2.20 F1, which is a version I've been using, and I want to describe this. The interface of Unity changed a little bit in between, so I will show you how does it look like. So we'll create a new project. So we'll go here in the hub into the left panel. We'll create a new project, and here I'll choose here in the tab. You'll see this 2023.2. So here I'm gonna call it new project in 2023 version, just to show the interface. And here I will just choose the direction where I want to save. I just select the folder documents and then create a project. In this case, I really want to use any three-dimensional or 3D template, which could be the built-in render pipeline, the universal 3D pipeline, or even the VR pipeline, which we'll see later. But I think for this one, as long as it's a three-dimensional file or template, I think it's fine. So we'll just create it, click here, and then we'll go. Alright, so here we go. We're checking there's a Unity Package Manager, installing packages here, updating as much as the software can. So the first thing you will see in Unity, aside of this loading bar, particularly if you load the first time this version of this project, is that we'll have different panels here. I will go through all of them in detail. You can, if you already know or understand different panels or concepts of them, you can actually speed the video up. But I actually take a lot of time in explaining them, because it's good to have a good foundation and understanding of each of the panels and all the navigations, because there are many tutorials in the internet, there are many tutorials around that do not explain very well how this interface of how certain tools and packages work in Unity. So the first thing I want to explain you is here we'll have by default these folders navigation in the bottom. So here in the bottom you'll see there is something called scenes. It has a sample scene. You can actually load it, probably, and it will load something. This is where you save your scenes for the project. So everything related to your project and your directory, it will be saved in these folders. So any, for example, UIs or anything, any assets that you may have, for example, music, UI assets, sprites, different assets that you may import later. Everything you want to keep in the library of this corresponding project, it will be in the packages folder. So you actually here, if you click, you do a right click, you can, or control click if you are in MacBook. You can create a new folder and then save elements. So for example, here I will create a folder called scenes, and then here, then you can open that folder. Of course, it's empty, And here you will see your scenes. Later on, if you want to create anything else, you can create another folder, for example, that's called scripts, to save your codes and scripts in the C#, right? And then you'll also be able to create a folder, for example, for certain assets. I don't know what will be, maybe animations, for example. You can also create folders and create it here. So what is important to understand here is that everything that is around this folder is actually not in the scene or within the scene. It's actually within the spectrum of the project. So this is actually a real directory. If you right click on any of these folders here or here, for example, you do a right click and you click here and show and explore it, it will actually show you the real directory of your project, which is in my case, I create this project. I call it new project 2023 version interface, right? So here you will see there's 3 folders I just created, and you will see them here. So you have animations, and you have script, you have scenes, etc. So this is an actual directory, but elements that are here are not necessarily into the scene. Okay, so if you have any asset, for example, a 3D object, OBJ file, or I don't know, a 3ds file or FBX file that you want to import from other softwares, let's say Maya, 3D Max, from Rhino, from SketchUp, you want to import files to Unity, then you may have them in different folders here, but that doesn't mean they will be on a scene, okay? And later in this same direction, so a lot of people actually keep very tidy here. I actually think it's a good practice, so you will also try to keep tidy and organize your scenes, for example. Drag it here. As you can see, the empty folders are just marked in boundary, and the folders that have something, they will be marked on full. So that means there's files inside those folders. At the same time, here you'll see the console. Console actually shows the errors, which is very important, particularly when we are programming, we're doing inputs, outputs, or certain interactions. Those interactions maybe they may trigger some errors, or sometimes we are downloading some packages or plugins. We are also playing a scene, etc., etc. So if you want to do, you want to see the warnings or anything that relates to programming, you'll see here the console. You can also script some messages and see them on a screen when they are executing or compiling. Okay, so here you'll see these are different degrees of error, and they can be classified by the biggest warnings, etc. So some of them are actually built warnings, some of them not. And you can also clear them here, and then they may disappear if they are not consistent errors. I think in that case you may not worry too much, but if they are consistent errors, they will keep appearing here when you are executing those scripting files. So, but don't get scared about scripting, don't get scared about programming, because if it's something that you may not be very familiar, we'll see it later on in the videos, the video tutorials, and the course. Okay, so important here, project and console. Some people may change these folders into different areas. For example, if you hold the click, right, and you try to drag these folders around, you will see there's I can drag this folder here, this folder I can drag it here as well. You'll see here, and I can drag them into another sections of the panel, or I can also make them float if I want to do something that is that requires to adjust, for example, the size of the folder, or if it's more comfortable for you to browse around in not in the console, but let's say in the project you want to browse something in a more comfortable way, you can also explore it and enlarge or scale this window. And here you can also see the size of here on this, let's call it zoom panel. You can also see modify certain how the element, the icons are visualized into the scene. If you prefer its own list or into the big icons, that's actually a personal preference, right? So we'll go to the hierarchy panel. The hierarchy panel shows elements that are actually on scene. So the hierarchy panel is also something that may help you to visualize every element that is in a scene. So if you see here, we have a main camera, and you can use the scroll of your mouse to zoom in and zoom out. And you can also use the scroll wheel in the middle. A scroll wheel has usually a button that will press, right? And you can move around. And you move around with the wheel, and then you'll see there are elements. For example, there's a directional light, and then you'll see there's also a camera here. You can move those elements, but those elements are actually inside scene. So it's a sample scene that only contains these two elements, right? Enough to understand that elements that are in the hierarchy panel, you can also visualize it here. So these elements may be here on your directory folder, but they are also in the scene. So they are ready to be visualized or ready to trigger something or ready to appear into the scene of the game you're creating. For example, you can also arrange elements, like organize them by different hierarchies. So in Unity, there's something called hierarchy that you may try to understand. You can create something called parents or childs. This concept of parenting or child, which means which one is over the other one. So to give you an example, what I will do here in the hierarchy, I will do a right click and I will go to 3D object and create a cube. So the cube is actually created on scene, so it's not created on the project. Okay, so it will be ready and directly in scene to visualize. So you'll see here there's a gizmo where you can actually move and drag these elements into different 3 axes, right? As any 3-dimensional software. So here when we have cube, I'm going to maybe create another object. Let's call it I don't know, a sphere. I'll create a sphere here, and then I will move this sphere to this side, and then let's move it here. And then if what happens if I want to put these 2 objects and drag them or move them together, what I want to do here is to create an empty object that we'll call them geometry, let's call it geometry container, or just could be container, right? And then these 2 ones, the cube and sphere, you can drag them here into this, and then if you want to move them together, then you will click on this geometry container, and then you should be able to move them. So it's also a way to apply transformation, move and drag elements together. And you will see they have this cube have in the right side in the inspector, you'll see they have all the properties, and the sphere also has its own properties which change it according to when we click them, right? But in the geometry container, we'll see there's no such a properties, because it's just a container, an empty container that allow us to move and transform these 2 or whatever elements we put inside the hierarchy. So that's why it's called the hierarchy panel, and it's very useful because with these elements we can actually control groups of game objects inside. So we generally try to keep this also very tidy. We try to organize by hierarchies. If, for example, we are building a table, we'll try to put all the elements together, and inside the table, for example, I will let's say create another 3D object like this, and if I want to move these elements together, then I can actually just move them. If I want to make an element, a child of it, I can just create it from here, right click, and then find the element and create it. But at the same time, I can also drag them. So you see, if I hold them, I click them, and I can drag them around. I can move them outside this parent object that they have, or I can make them a child object. For example, this sphere and this cube are actually parent-child objects, etc. So for this, actually, it's very Unity is a very comprehensive software. It helps us to arrange the elements into different hierarchies, and this is how we will organize the elements either the assets we bring from outside, because Unity is a game engine. So the elements we bring from outside, or elements we create inside the game engine, we'll arrange them in this type of hierarchy. So important to know, important to remember is that any element that will be ready for rendering, ready for appearing to the game, once we click play, are elements that are here in this panel and not in the project folder, right? That doesn't mean that if you create any element that you can actually create, you can also drag them into the scene. So if you have elements in your project, you can drag them into the hierarchy panel or directly into the scene. Okay, so it's also possible to create any type of object. You may create a prefab or any other elements such as 2D objects, etc. And then we can actually drag them here and into the scene. So now how I actually delete elements. So we can actually delete, if we do a right click, I would just delete here any element. Just delete this geometry container, and this will be our hierarchy panel. Let's create another, just keep some elements. Let's create a cylinder here. So once we have this element object, of course in the scene it will be super complete. We'll have a lot of things around. We'll have this window which is called the scene panel. This scene panel will have different elements. One tool that is called move, which will help us to move and pan around. There's another tool that will also help us to move here in different directions. This tool will help us, for example, to move in different axes. We'll have three-dimensional axes, and if I use my right click on the mouse, which I suggest you to use, here we'll see this gizmo, okay, that allows us to move around, and here you should be able to see. You can click here and you should be able to see your gizmos, right? So here are the gizmos that you have. This one is the gizmo for dragging and moving around the scene. This, if you select these two, it will move into these two axes, and then if we move to the other side here, it will move into these two axes, and so on and so forth, right? So this is how we actually move around. We can navigate with this also type of toggle gizmo. Will show us here where it says perspective. I'm not sure how clear it is, but it says perspective. We'll click here and it says ISO, right? And it will show us an orthogonal view, which means a strict 90 degrees each other into different axes. But we'll also click here and we'll see a perspective view, which allow us to navigate a little bit on more detail, but you can use both. And then here you will see 4 or actually 6 different toggles that you can click around, and once you click them you will see strict views, which these strict views actually help you to organize and arrange elements. For example, if I want to duplicate this cylinder, I click here into the cylinder and click duplicate, right? once I duplicate this element, I move it, drag it a little bit. So if I want to organize it and put it just right next to it here, and I want to move it just in that axis, but here I want to drag them and put them next to each other, then I will just use this gizmo and move it into a very strict view. And in this one, I also want to put them into this square grid here in the background. It will be helpful for me to use this to navigate instead of using the right click on the mouse. Okay, so two things: right click on the mouse, free navigation, but you can also use this as a strict view. The strict views will be strict once they are, you see an icon here that says right, it will show you left, front, and all the regular views. You also here, if you click here, you won't see those strict views. You will see the perspective of those views, to the right, to the front, to the left. You keep seeing but in perspective. But if you click it here, then you will see them on a strict view. So here, for example, on the top, I want to arrange this one, and I want to create some sort of column. That, and then I want to probably click another, duplicate, and then I also want to duplicate this too, and then move maybe this one, move them together. How do I do that? Well, there are many ways that you can do that. In this case, I just use Shift and I select both. So you click Shift and then you click on both, and then you can move them and drag them around. But you can also be much more organized before creating this. I'm just going back with Ctrl C. Then you can actually create an empty and then put these two, and then we can actually duplicate this empty, and we can call it, we can rename it with right click here and rename it, and then we'll call it two columns, and then this one will be called rename, we'll call it two columns. Or even better, just rename one, delete this one, and then once you duplicate this one, you'll have the other one. So very good. So now for this scene panel, we'll also see how we can actually rotate the elements here. For example, if I want to rotate any of these elements, I can rotate them and move them around here. But you can also rotate them in a more strict view. And here you will see there are, in detail, you'll see every time you hold an element, an object, you'll see different cycles, 3 cycles. So you move this one into a point, and then you can also move them into another axis. So there are different axes. We have these 2 axes that we can move around, and then you can rotate elements. You can also scale objects. You will see here, let's go to a more precise location. You can also scale certain elements here with scale tool. You can click on object and you'll see there's a sort of gizmo as well that allows you to drag this into a different size. So if you drag this one from one axis, you will see that it's moving and scaling only in that direction. Same with the other side. You scale it here, it will also scale only in that direction, and the same with this one. So there are different elements here allow us to scale, and if we click on the middle and drag around to outside, we pull outside, we pull inside, and you'll see we can scale this element here, and we can also scale the whole group of elements if we click here into the group right in parent object, and the same for this one. We click onto this one, we can also pull around, and then we'll scale them and change their size, okay, and alter the shapes also by different axes if you wanted to to do so. Right. So then different objects and different ways to transform an object. And here there's also a transformation. You will see there are some vertex, or here you see edges that are orange, right? And then you will see edges, and then you will see how this is actually altering or changing the shape. So important thing that in scene you will see the transforming tool that shows all the elements at the same time, dragging, scaling, and everything together. If you click on it, then you'll also see another type of editing. Right, here we'll edit another type of element which is called collider. We'll see later. And here we'll see there's all the elements can be altered together. Right? You'll see here. Right? So then important here is the views. Right, we can navigate through different views when we are moving around the scene. And here, if you click on the right side, top side here of this window called scene, then you will see there are many gizmos that you may want to activate or deactivate according to what you are doing or what you are editing on. Sometimes you want to edit something, and sometimes there are too many gizmos where you have, I don't know, maybe too many different objects, sound, scripts, etc. So you don't want to visualize these gizmos. You can actually just tune them off. Okay, so here in built-in components, scripts, different type of gizmos. Right now, different to the scene window is the game window. The game window actually shows us where is actually our camera and what will be displayed once we press play here. So the game is actually the view of the main camera that you may have. So if we go to the hierarchy panel, hierarchy here, so we go hierarchy, main camera, and then you will see, we'll look at it where in the scene, where is our camera. You see our camera is actually looking at somewhere, and it's looking to that side, and here you will see is actually not certain elements are not appearing into the camera once the game is actually playing. So if we move the camera to somewhere, let's try to click it here. We'll click this one to move the camera, right? But we wanted to see what's the effect of this. So if we want to do that, I suggest you to actually create another or separate this and split these ones in two. So you will see actually what the camera is pointing at. Okay, and where the camera and what are the elements that will be into your scene. You can also change the display of a game here according to for what you're building at, different type of resolutions, right? Or different type of aspects if you are building for 16:9 or if you are building for full HD, and then the window will adapt to it. Okay, so this one is 16:9 for example, and then you will see how a camera actually visualizes this. So every time you press play here, and we'll try to open it, you will see here it's scene. You press play here, then the game window will appear automatically in Unity. So it will actually show what is happening in the game. But the game window is not editable. So if we try to click or do something here, we cannot do anything. Nothing is interactable except what is programmed to be interactable. Because we are not in editing mode. But scene is always in editing. So even if we are playing something, we can edit something. Okay? If we move something here, then we'll see this change onto the game once it's playing. Okay? But I suggest you to keep editing, always turning off this, because it uses a lot of engine resources and a lot of computing resources. So I suggest you to keep going and work with the scene. Alright, so very clear between these two, very clear differences. The game is different to the scene. Okay, the game, it will be always in everything that is ready to play will appear here, everything that is on camera will appear here, elements that are not camera or they are out of the scope of the camera, they won't be here. All right, and that's something important to understand. And if you actually click here on the scale, you will see the start to pixel because it's an actual camera, it's not an editing canvas like the scene window. Got it? So main difference, and here every time you want to see how the game looks like, you can also press play and you will see how this is looking like according to the device you are building. If you are building for Windows, if you are building for anything else. Got it? So important to know, important to understand the difference between these two windows. There is also the inspector, which is one of the most important windows in Unity, which will show you all the properties of any element. So if we create, for example, an element here, right click and then let's create a cube. I'll just create a cube here. If you create a cube, then you will see all the properties of this cube, and then in the right side you will see there are position, rotation, transformation, which are the same elements here that you can edit, but you can actually edit them more precisely. For example, I want to put them into the 0 axis, 0, 0, 0, 0, into the origin. So they actually, the cube is currently into the 0x, 0y series. Alright, and you can also rotate this in different axes. For let's call it, we'll rotate it 90 or maybe 16 degrees, and then here we'll also rotate it 60 degrees, and here maybe also 60, and you'll see the result once you edit into these panels, and then you will see the results. And notice that actually the gizmo is following the object instead of following the world axis. It's actually following the object. Alright, so let's bring it back to 0, 0. But you can also scale it. You can change certain things, like let's say call it 30, 30, and maybe see 20, for example. And now it's huge. We cannot actually visualize it. It's kind of very, very large scale. Let's back to the scale. Let's call it 2, 2, 2 maybe. We'll call it like a 2, or maybe we'll want to transform this into a floor. So we'll try to scale it and transform it into a floor. You'll see here. We'll go into strict views here and here, and then if we want to scale it into something like this maybe, and then I'll just scale it and you'll see the changes on the inspector. Okay, so very important panel is the inspector, and you'll see from the top maybe it's still not like a floor. You'll probably have to keep editing this into something larger, and then you will see how the shadow reflects onto this floor. Okay, elements, important elements for the inspector is that you will see all the components inside an object into the inspector. So if these components are not inside the object or the game object, then they are not assigned to it. And here, important to understand is to learn that in Unity, every time that you have a game object, you have to add components. So Unity works in form of component. Okay, every component will add certain properties, and those properties will be seen or they will be used into the game object. For example, this object has a component called transformation, which allows us to transform this rectangle, this cube into a floor, right, or transform the shape and position and location, right? But at the same time, we also have this mesh renderer, for example, that allows us to keep materials, and this element that is collider, which allows us to crash elements within others and activate the physical engine of Unity, which we will see in later episodes of this series of videos. Here you can also see a material, so you can also assign materials And you can add, for example, scripts here. You can add some behaviors, and you can add audio, for example, to an object. You can add many elements, for example, a rigid body, which means this element is affected by the physics engine, and then it will be affected by mass, angular drag, gravity, and other things once we use it. So there are many elements that you can add to a game object, and you can also remove them. For example, here, if you click into these three dots, you can add them, and if you click here into add component, you can keep adding components. You can add scripts, program an object to trigger something, etc. So the inspector is a very important tool, and you'll see once you click the objects, different objects, the properties of the inspector will change. For example, this one has a collapser, capsule collider. You will see it's a capsule actually. If we zoom in a little bit, it's actually a capsule that elements will crash into this capsule if there are certain interactions of this. Now, important to know as well at the same time is that the properties here, for example, have changed and change and vary according to object to object. Another very important panel in here is actually the the package manager. The package manager in Unity, it actually helps you to load different elements and different objects, or load different plugins, as it will be called in other softwares. You can open this package manager, for example here, and a package manager will help you. Some people actually keep it here into a third tab. And then important here is that you will see packages that are inside your project that may be somehow here. Packages, for example, you want to download terrains, you want to download a cartoonish style from the Unity asset store that we'll see later, and you want to download any type of element, or something that helps you to cut user interface images, or Photoshop images, PNGs, etc. Packages are elements that help you to streamline your process into the creation of a video game or experience in Unity. So important here is that you may have packages that are already inside your project according to the template or according to anything you need. But there also, if you go here into the package manager, you can click into the Unity registry and you can download packages there for different things. For example, something I use a lot is the XR interaction toolkit that you will see XR hands. For example, I use a lot the toolkit, but you can also download elements for UI. You will see physics, OpenXR from Meta if you want to actually connect the headset. There are many 2D animations, sprites, etc. So recommended to know that this package manager will download packages from Unity, and then you can use these packages for certain things. Let's try the interaction toolkit, for example. Let's try to see if we can install it here. Once you click here, you will see they're trying to install the package. Packages have different versions, as same as softwares. You have different releases, and some of them may crash to each other. So you will also have to always try to follow the setup, or the best setup, or the less conflicted setup. Some people try to over download packages, which is something that is not very good. So I suggest you to really download the packages you just need, but don't over download packages into a project that you don't need. Okay, so only the packages that are necessary for your project, load them. Otherwise they may be conflicting each other. is already installed, then here you can remove it. Here you can see the history of these packages, samples, and different for example, this contains shader graphs and etc. This is the basic Unity interface. You may also see that there are elements, for example, in components, which you can actually load and into the scene, that are the same that we can load once we do a right click, right? We can add lights, effects, audio sources, for example, that we'll see later, 3D objects, etc. Cameras, UI elements that help us to build interfaces where we can click and build a better user experience of the game, etc. etc. So here, these are the main tools. So you will see editing tools are standard for pretty much for every type of project, and we'll see here different type of three-dimensional elements and components. We'll have different type of and here we can also manage our panels, what kind of panel and windows we want to see into our or we can close all floating panels as well. And at the same time, you can see, for example, here we can add there's another window that's something important. Let me try to find it. General panels. So if you go to here to animation, then we'll see there's a panel of animation, and then here is where we actually edit animations in Unity. Most of them are prepared from, we try to import it or try to bring it somewhere else, and then we try to elaborate small animations and control them with something called animator controller. If we go window animation, then we'll see animator, which is a different window where you will see there's also certain elements and parameters, which now is empty. Also to be familiar with, here into the, if you go to file and build settings, you will see there is there are different elements according to how you your installation of your version is. You have different elements. For example, you have here Windows, Mac, Android. These are actually the versions that you can build on the current version you have installed of Unity. In my case, I install Android version, so I can build applications for Android and then test it here, as well as Windows. I can also build some applications for web and online Web 5 particularly. So if I have three-dimensional elements I want to run into the browser, then I can also test it into Unity, just run in play, but I have to click on here and set up the platform here and switch it. But for now I will just keep it into Windows, Mac, Linux here. But when you want to build something for, let's say, virtual reality, augmented reality, either mobile or for Oculus, or we use Android as a standard, and after version 6 of Unity we use the version of Meta. So in this case, once you connect a headset, you can actually see the device running and connected here. So once you set up the Oculus interface and connect, integrate it into Unity. So I think that's all for now. I think maybe you can try to build something on, but this is a very basic approach on to the Unity interface, very fast and I hope I cover most of the details which are important to understand before you start to build something on Unity. So I hope it was useful and see you next time.